Welcome back to day number 13 of my 31 days of Halloween themed drawing tutorials. In today's new video, I'm gonna show you how you can draw this Halloween themed coffin from start to finish. No time lapse, it's all in real time. So if you wanna draw along with me, keep watching. All right guys, so let's draw a coffin. Starting out, I'm using a 3000 by 3000, 300 DPI canvas. I'm not gonna go over my brushes right away because we're not gonna start out with those, believe it or not. And for my color palette, I've got this pre-made just like the rest in the series. See, it's pretty basic, but we're gonna do something cool with this. So if you wanna download this, follow along with the exact colors that I'm using, you can go to my website, bjdell.com. Underneath the YouTube reference section, there is this color palette in there along with a bunch of other stuff. I'll link it in the description below. Just save this as a JPEG, download it to your camera roll. Then you can go up to your wrench icon, go to add, insert a photo and bring in the color palette. I'll bring it in as a separate layer. And then you can just go through and long press each of the colors to get them selected up there as we go through here. So let's go ahead and get started. First thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go up here to my color palette and I'm gonna go to this first gray. And then I'm just going to drag and drop it into my canvas. So we've just got a huge square of gray. And this is gonna be the start of our coffin. So to do this, we're gonna go up to our transform here with the arrow and with freeform selected, we're just gonna drag this in towards the center like so. Make it a little bit smaller here. And that's what we want. So now we're gonna go to distort and we're going to pull in the sides towards the center. Coffins have that very kind of angled look to them. They widen out here, narrow in at the bottom, and then narrow in at the top. Just that classic coffin look. So that's what we're going for here. And once we've got that set, we're just gonna go back up to our layers and we're gonna slide this one to the left and we're gonna duplicate it. So now I've got two of the same thing. So now I wanna go back up to my arrow here and with freeform selected, I wanna flip this vertically. So we've got a top and a bottom now. So we can go ahead and pull this top down to make it shorter. And then we're just gonna slide this up. You see those blue lines, lock it in. So we know that we're exactly where we're supposed to be. Got a bit of a gap there. So I'm gonna go ahead, select that again. If I just go down here at the bottom and outside and just nudge, just hit outside of the canvas, it'll nudge that down and you get rid of that gap. So, oops, went back, unfortunately. Come on. Try this again, nudge it again. There we go. So we're nudged, no gap. So now I want to go back in and go to my layers here. And I'm going to go ahead and combine these by pinching them together. So those are merged now. And then I'm going to go back to my arrow here and just kind of shrink this down. Maybe distort it a little bit more here towards the top. Just so it has that exact look that I'm going for. This just gives you a lot of control instead of drawing the lines and having one side off and one side bigger. Just easier to do this way. So we've got that now. Let's go ahead and make this the inside part of the coffin. We're gonna have the lid kind of coming off. So for this, we're gonna go to this layer. We're gonna slide this to the left and we're gonna duplicate it. So now we've got two of the same layer. I see I've got a dot right here though. So let me go ahead and clear that dot out. That's why this isn't centered on that layer. There we go, now it's centered. So once again, sliding this to the left, we're gonna duplicate. So we got two of the same one now, and we're gonna go back up to our color palette, and we're gonna go to this darker gray. And we're gonna slide that over and fill that in. So now two of the exact same thing, this one just being a little bit darker. So going back up to our arrow here, we're gonna go ahead and go to freeform, and we're just gonna kind of pull this in towards the center. So it's kind of got that edge to it. The lighter gray is gonna work like the ledge or edge of the coffin. So it's gonna look like it's coming into itself and it's open. So we've got that. Now that that's done, repeat it one more time. We're gonna slide this to the left and we're gonna duplicate. And then we want to go back up to our colors, and this darkest gray over here, so the fourth one, that's what we're going to select. We're going to drag and drop that in there. And then one more time, coming back up here, going to our transform, we're going to drag this inside. So this is going to be kind of the inside bottom or floor of the coffin. And then we're going to give this a little bit of dimension too. So to do that, we're going to go back up to our layers. And this middle one here, we're going to go ahead and alpha lock this one. And now I'm going to use a brush. First time here in the tutorial. I'm going to use my standard Inker Streamline. This is part of my cartooning brush set. And I'm just going to kind of draw a tapered line coming from that corner down and meeting that darker color. So it kind of looks like that edge coming down, and it gives it that three-dimensional feel. Oops, I got that dot there. And with this, I just kind of want a thinner line towards the bottom. Do that a couple times so you can see it. Thinner line towards the bottom. We're just going to go around to all these corners where they meet and just do the same thing to all the different corners. Thicker in the back, thinner towards the front. And I think one last one. So now you can kind of see how that's working out. It's really got that three-dimensional take going on with it. So that's pretty much it for the inside. Let's go ahead and do the top of the coffin now. So I'm going to go to my bottom layer here. I'm going to slide this to the left, and I'm going to go ahead and duplicate it. I'm going to bring this up to the top now, and then I'm going to slide that to the left and duplicate it again. So I want the inside to kind of be inset. It's going to have a little bit of a different color. So we're going to go up to our color palette here and the third one over, that lighter gray. Drag that in there. Once again, back up to our transform here. And just like we did before, we're going to pull this one in. I'm going to make this one come in probably a little bit further though than the inside ones. And just trying to get it the kind of same width all the way around here is my goal. Once we have that looking pretty good, we can go ahead and lock that in, hit the brush. There we go. So we've got the top. Let's go ahead and kind of move this over now. So with this one in blue, we're going to slide this one to the right. Now we've got both of them selected. Both of them are blue. That allows us to go in and transform and grab and turn both of them at the same time. So we're just going to kind of move this here over to the side and just kind of have that barely visible. There's some stuff in here. We did all those extra lines we didn't really need to do, but I wasn't sure how far over I wanted to move it. And I think that looks pretty good. I'm going to bring the top up just a tad bit so it covers that line there. And I think that looks pretty good. So a few extra steps on the inside of this, but that allows you to kind of move it wherever you want. You don't have to do it exactly like I did. So let's go ahead and add a cross to this now. So to do that, I'm gonna go back up to my layers here, just touch on a layer so that you deselect both of those. And we're gonna go ahead and hit the plus button. I'm gonna go up to my colors again and go to this dark gray here. And once again, I'm just gonna drag, fill in the entire canvas. This is a super quick and easy way to make rectangles too. We kind of use this to do the coffin, use the distort, but if we just go up here, once again to the transform and just kind of start dragging this in, a lot easier way to do a rectangle than drawing everything by hand and making sure that, okay, is this the same size on this edge and is it all lined up? So now we're going to go back up to our layers. We're going to slide this one to the left and we're going to duplicate it. Then we're going to go back up to our transform and we're going to rotate this 45 degrees twice. Now that we've got that, let's go ahead and move it up and move it in. I think that looks pretty good there. Maybe this side's a tad bit longer. If it is, we can just erase that. Or you can pull it in again. It's up to you. All right, so the rectangles are done to form the cross. We're gonna go ahead and merge these. So there's that. Going back up then to our arrow, we're gonna grab the cross and get it to where we want it to be here. There towards the center. And there we go, we got it locked in. So we've got the coffin pretty much done. So let's go ahead and have a skeleton hand kind of peeking and creeping out of the coffin, kind of add to that Halloween factor. So I'm gonna go ahead and select my white. Then I'm gonna go up to my layers again. I'm gonna make a new layer. And then I'm gonna zoom in here so we can see a little bit better. Once again, using my standard Inker streamline, I'm just gonna draw some skeleton fingers kind of creeping out of this coffin lid. And I love drawing cartoon skeletons. So much fun because one of like the, I guess, most accepted ways of drawing them that's become, you know, kind of commonplace is you don't have to connect all the bones together. So these gaps in between are a pretty common way of drawing a skeleton. And I just think that's fun. It goes against, you know, the realism factor. And I think doing non-realistic stuff and getting away with stuff like that and kind of pushing the envelope with how things look, I think that's always fun to do. And of course, skeletons are just fun to draw anyway, so. And with this, if you wanted to, you could always go in and do this once and then just copy and paste, duplicate these across if you didn't want to draw every single one of these. I like drawing stuff like this just because it doesn't look mechanical. So each one's going to be a tad bit different, even though they're kind of the same. You can do stuff like this, like pulling one off to the side a little bit more. And that way they don't look all exactly the same from start to finish. And I think it just makes for a kind of better design. So to each their own though, if you want to save time and just duplicate those layers like we did the other ones and just drag them over, you can do that too. So there we go, we've got the skeleton hand kind of creeping out of there. Only problem here is, of course, we've got these overlapping. You could go in here and try to erase these perfectly, but if you go up too far, you're gonna start to have that gap there. So an easy way to fix this is if we go back up to our layers and we select that darker gray right here. We're gonna touch on that layer and then we're gonna select, it's gonna bring up the menu down here. One thing I would urge you to do, make sure color fill is turned off. This is one of the new features with Procreate 5X. If you have color fill turned on, it's gonna mess everything up. So make sure that that's turned off. And then now that that's selected, we're gonna go back up to our skeleton fingers and we're gonna erase. So you'll see, that one I don't wanna erase, just these back ones. You'll see what it's doing is it's basically using this layer as a guide for what we can erase. Anything that touches this layer, it's gonna erase. Anything back here, it's not gonna erase. That's why we can get that nice line in there. So super easy way to make sure that if you have overlapping stuff, you don't worry about getting rid of it. So there we go, that's gonna be kind of the base design. So let's start adding in some shadows and some highlights now. So to do this, I'm gonna go to this layer one, this lightest color here. I'm gonna add a new layer and I'm gonna set this as clipping mask. This is gonna be the start of our shadows. I've talked about this before. You got two different ways to add shadows. If you wanna do it simply and stay inside the lines, you can do it like I'm doing here, clipping mask on a separate layer, add your shadows. This is a non-destructive way of doing things. So if you wanna go in here and adjust the opacity of the shadows, you can. Likewise, you can also go in here and just draw directly on this layer. If you set it to alpha lock, none of your colors or your shadows are gonna go outside of that layer. However, it's just destructive because it's on top of that color you've already done. So you can't adjust the opacity, because if you do, it's gonna adjust the opacity of the entire layer. Likewise, if you go in and erase stuff, it's gonna erase what you've already done there too. That's why I like clipping mask. The only downside, just takes up more layers. So if you have a non-pro version iPad, you might run out of layers eventually if you're doing a lot like that. So let's get started. Once again, I'm on that top layer here that sets clipping mask. I'm going to go in and I'm going to choose this darker gray to begin with. Then going back up to my brushes, I'm going to choose my texture brushes here. And for this one starting out, I'm going to go ahead and go with specks, just because I want to kind of build up just a overall texture to the lid to begin with. I'll zoom in here so you can kind of see that. So that's building up those specks in here, changing the color a little bit. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to start coming in on the sides a little bit heavier, so that once again this looks like it's kind of coming in and there's a ledge there. Do the same thing here. And you'll see I'm actually going outside here because I kind of want that fade. And by starting outside, I'm just catching the edge of that brush as it comes in. If I would start in here, it's going to go all the way towards the center. So by starting outside, it's just getting the edge of that brush, and it allows me to have a lot more control over those shadows. Darken this one up just a tad, bring it in a little bit further. Same thing here. This I just kind of want to keep it even so it looks kind of like a line, but not really because it fades out. So there we go. We've got that coming in. I think that looks good. And then from here, if you wanted to, you could add in some extra shadows as well. If you wanted to go darker, you could go with black. And then that's just going to kind of darken in everything that you've done already. We just pull some black here. Let's just kind of bring that home a little bit more. All right, so there we go. We've got that done. Let's go ahead and let's select our white color here. And I want to go to that gray around here. I want to add a little bit of highlights on the side. So with that selected, I'm going to go ahead and make a new layer. And once again, set this to clipping mask. And I'm going to shrink this down quite a bit. I just kind of want to hit the side here, just like I did with the black, or that gray color. So once again, we just got some textures going in here as well. Don't want to get it too light though. I'm just going to do a little bit down here just for the texture. I don't want it to really be a highlight. I just want it to be more of the texture there. We'll do the same thing here, just a tad bit. And for this one, I'm going to go back to this lighter gray here, just so I can add in that texture and not have it appear like a highlight. All right, and there we go. Now let's go ahead and add in some shadows here where the hands are coming out and around. So I'm going to go back to that darker gray. I'm going to go to that first shadow layer that we did here. And then with this, I'm going to use sand. And I'm just going to bring in some shadows here underneath the fingers. Then going back to that other layer here that the gray here's on. Select that and do the same thing here. Get some shadows there so it looks kind of three-dimensional like it is casting a shadow. And now let's go ahead and add some shadows then to the fingers themselves. So I'm going to make a new layer. Once again, I'm going to set this as clipping mask. I'm going to go back up to my colors and I'm going to go over to this dark blue here. And then for this, I'm going to use the Rust Grunge, the next one up here. And I'm going to go ahead and do some shadows here to the sides. Kind of heavier here towards the back, letting up towards the front. If this looks a little too dark in certain areas, don't worry, we're going to actually adjust the opacity on this one. So now that we've got that, I'm going to go in and let's go back to that Rust Grunge on my eraser section. I'm going to kind of pull a little bit of this out right on this one. So there we go. And then going back up to my layers here, I'm gonna go to the blend mode of that layer and just drop the opacity. So it's not too dark, not too light. And I think that looks pretty good there. So we've got some shadows going on with that one. Let's go ahead and add some shadows then on this back. So to do this one, let's go ahead and start with the very bottom one first. Touch on that one, maybe. It looks like maybe my stuff froze. Did it freeze? Nope, there we go. So make a new layer here. I'm gonna set this as clipping mask as well. Gonna go to, I'm actually gonna use black straight off this time. And then for my brush, let's go ahead and go to the sand again. Just gonna pull in shadow here. Kind of letting up as it goes. And I think for the rest, I'm gonna use the specks again here on the back just to add that texture in there. With that, and then I'm also going to go in with some gray just to add some extra specks in there. Just kind of has that granite feel to it. And then going back in with my black again here because I kind of removed some of that. So there we go. I think that looks cool there. Let me go back. I think I want a little bit more shadows here underneath the hand. So if I go back here to layer 9 right there, bring in these shadows a little bit more here. There we go. A little bit more right there. And that's about as small as this one goes. You don't have a lot of control. I made this brush super, super big. So I'm going to go back to my specks now to kind of build that up a little bit more. Or my sand. If I want to blend this too, I can also go to my smudge tool here and then going to my textures using that sand to kind of blend that just a tad bit. See how that works. It kind of still gives you the texture there, but it kind of blends it in just a little bit nicer instead of having it super, super dark. Maybe a little too dark there. There we go. All right, enough playing around with that. Now let's go ahead and add some extra shadows in here. So if I go to black once again, I'm gonna go to my, let's see, this layer here that sets alpha lock. We're gonna make a new layer, set this to clipping mask. And then for this one, I'm gonna go ahead and use rust grunge on this one. And I'm just going to kind of pull in along the edge here. So it's going to have a little bit more of a shadow coming down. I want to start at the top because I don't want this to be too dark as it meets that other one. It's going to lose that line that separates them. So that's why I'm coming in from the top. Also, that's going to give off that shadow as well. So there's that. And then finally with the black, I'm going to come in with my specks here. And on this layer 1, I'm going to go ahead, make a new layer. Clipping mask this one, my specks, and just kind of hit some of this here as it comes up on the side. Kind of fade it off there towards the center. All right, so there's our finished coffin. Let's go ahead and kind of add a background here real quick. So to do this, I'm gonna go back to my layers and background color. I'm gonna set this to black. And then I'm gonna go ahead and, before I do that, one thing, I wanna add in some shadows here. I totally forgot, the cross looks a little plain. So let's add in some shadows real quick to that. And this we're just gonna do, once again, on a new layer. And clipping mask. And let's use that rust grunge again, and then black selected. Just gonna hit towards the top here. Line in there. Let's just do a line straight across here too. Oops, don't want it too thick. There we go. I'm gonna go in with the eraser, and I'm just gonna set this to that rust grunge as well. Just kind of erase that a little bit. So that gives that look that kind of comes in and has some dimension to it as well. There we go. Pretty easy and quick. So let's finish this off. For this last part, I'm gonna go to my very bottom layer here. I'm gonna make a new layer, and I'm gonna drag this down to the bottom. I'm gonna go up here now, and I'm gonna select white. And then for my brush, this I'm gonna switch over to something that's included with Procreate under calligraphy. If you go to monoline, this one's super easy to use because it doesn't matter how hard you press on this, it's gonna keep the same line weight from start to finish. So if you kind of let off at the end, anything like that, it doesn't matter. It's gonna keep the same line weight from start to finish. And we're just gonna kind of draw this almost like starburst thing around. This is kind of a classic trope that is based around Coffin designs. You'll see this a lot with just classic Coffin illustrations. Has a very kind of flash art look to it from tattooing. And actually, I think I'll just keep it there. I don't want to take too much longer. So we'll just do this. You can do more if you want to. It's totally up to you, but we'll go ahead and keep that there. Then I'm going to go to my eraser, and I'm going to switch back to my standard inker streamline, and I'm just going to start to kind of erase to put these dashed lines in here. Key here is I don't want them to really touch the design, so they're going to come out from there. And I'm just going to drag these around, making them kind of different sizes as I go to. The gaps between them will be different from one line to the next. Some bigger dash on one, smaller ones on the next. And this can be pretty haphazard. However you want to do this, however you want this to look, make it your own and go for it. Or if you don't want to do this, you want to do something else for a background. Just didn't want to go super crazy with the background on here just to save a little bit of time. I kind of had an edge to the end there. Just keep pulling around here. So it just adds a little something extra here. So it's just not sitting on a plain white background. That's what I'm trying to do with a lot of these tutorials. I know some of my previous ones, I don't really go crazy with the backgrounds, but I thought these would be fun to all have at least something going on with the background for the month of October. So do that. And I think I want to do one more just kind of right here. I'm not going to have it connected on the other side. I just think that looks kind of empty right there. So we'll pull one more down here. All right, so there is that. I'm gonna go ahead and go back up to my brushes here, switch over to my cartooning standard inker because I've got to sign it. I've got to sign it. We just finished and we got to sign it. All right, so there we go. Today's tutorial on how to draw a cartoon, not really cartoon, but let's just go Halloween themed creepy coffin. And I'm gonna keep on working on some of these as I talk through the outro, just like I do sometimes. So hopefully you guys enjoyed today's video. If you did, make sure you do me a favor, give it a thumbs up. It really helps other people see the video if you guys take the time to give it a thumbs up. And we get a decent amount of views on the videos, but it seems like people can't be bothered to actually push that button on the thumbs up side. So if you could do that, it would help me out. Also, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, because I'm gonna do new videos, one a day, in October. I think you guys already know that, and you don't want to miss out. So if you hit that bell when you subscribe, you'll also get alerted when I post the new videos, so you can be one of the first ones to watch it. If you guys are taking part in these tutorials, if you follow along, definitely post them online. I want to see what you're doing. If you post them on Instagram or Twitter, tag me at BJDell. And also, if you're on Facebook, I've got a Facebook group for artists over there called Keep Creating, a group for artists by artists, a place where you can share your art, give feedback, get feedback, meet new friends. It's an awesome place to be and want you guys to join. So hop on over there. I'll link it in the description below. And let's see what else. You can find me online, bjdell.com. And also on my podcast, Make Money with Your Art, available wherever you listen to podcasts at. So that's it for me. I will be back tomorrow. Will you? Hopefully you will. Join me then. And until next time, keep creating.